Welcome to the Power of Arctic podcast. I'm your host, Tim Reeves. Originally engineered to provide global operational reach for elite military operations, TAC began as a specialized, low-profile capability. However, in recent years, it has matured into a widely recognized and indispensable ecosystem, serving as a cornerstone of situational awareness for everyone from frontline warfighters to domestic first responders. TAC is a powerful geospatial mapping and situational awareness software suite used by the Department of War, the Department of Homeland Security, first responders, and more. Joining the podcast to discuss how ERDC helps manage, operate, and advance this platform is Katlyn Mityga with ERDC's Geospatial Research Laboratory, who serves as the business operations lead for the TAC Product Center. Katlyn, thanks for joining us.
Morning, Tim. Thanks for having me.
That's a good intro for, just sitting down for a conversation in Mississippi.
Yeah.
Not bad. So as an overview, and I used TAC's acronym because I want to get into that, kind of talk about what TAC is and how it originally got its starts. And we're going to loop in ERDC's involvement later, but kind of give us that overview.
Sure. So TAC, or TAK, which could stand for the Team Awareness Kit or the Tactical Assault Kit, has both kind of names associated with it. Really, at its foundation is a geospatial mapping engine and a communications layer that's government owned that we open source as much as possible. And it came from its impetus from the Air Force Research Lab. It was an experimental project there that they were attempting to try to get a geospatial capability with chat associated onto a smartphone back in the early 2000s to give those guys on the ground that interoperability or that communication layer at the lowest level so they could communicate while they were doing missions. And so TAC really has thrived in this ecosystem. It's fully extensible. It's got plugins. So we just provide that core capability of that mapping engine, the communications layer, and then plugins and software development kits go on top of it. So different organizations can build in their special sauce to that mission. And it allows us to build different variants, right? So we have a mil variant for the military users, a gov variant, and then a civilian variant that's publicly releasable.
I think when we talked earlier, you said think about Google Maps, but this is I'm going to use a great grammatical phrase here, a much gooder Google map. Is that kind of a good comparable?
So, yeah, absolutely. It's a map, right? And that's the foundation of what it is. The cool part about it is we own it, and we own the ability to control all the data, what you're farming out, what you're holding on to, what you're not, right? And so that government-owned portion of it is what makes it really important, is that we've got so much control over it, and we can protect and encrypt the information that we need to.
And you talked about smartphones a minute ago, but today this mapping availability, the plugins, the adaptability of it is available on the phones, but for civilian and use. But it's also we mentioned special operators, like their mission planning, and it's like on Android tablets or that kind of stuff. That's really how they're handling it, correct?
Yeah, so the ecosystem is pretty vast, right? So I don't want you to think about TAC necessarily as like a single application. It's kind of a family of capabilities. So as you mentioned, it did start on an Android device. So ATAC, Android TAC, was the original use for case that we used. But from there, we need to have multiple groups associated together. So TAC server came about, which is a server capability. And then the commander in the operations center wants to be able to see it. So he needs a Windows version. So we have WinTAC, right? And then over time, you want web access and iPhone access. So WebTAC and iTAC came along. So those are kind of the platforms that it's on, which is pretty much any platform that's mobile or even not, right? When you talk computer systems. But then you've got the other side, which is the variant side, right? So we've got the MIL version, which is locked down because it's got tactical and targeting capabilities for our military users. The Gov version is for our federal law enforcement and local law enforcement. That's, again, kind of locked down. And then we have the Civ version, which is the publicly releasable version that literally you can go to Play Store or wherever you want to download your own version and use it. But those are the ones that our public safety, fire, and search and rescue have access to for the same mapping and awareness capability.
Now, the time we have on the podcast is not long enough to get into all those different capabilities and versions. So to our audience, both listening and watching, you can go to tac.gov, tak.gov, for this fantastic website. It gives you complete information about the different variants and the capabilities of the system. One of the platform's biggest strengths, you mentioned a minute ago, is its extensibility.
Yeah.
How does the plug-in architecture allow private sector developers or specific military units to customize TAC for their unique missions?
So one of the cool things, the power of TAC is just not the software the code we write, but really it's our partners, both public and private. So from the foundation of building TAC, it was built as an open platform that really was meant to adopt and integrate commercial technologies. And so that foundation of being able to build for whatever end user you want, and allowing those partners to come to the table with the ability to interoperate with that base core layer that we provide on the map is one of the greatest things we can provide. I believe last year at the TAC offsite, the director mentioned we have about 175 plugins in our repo that are used across multiple organizations, and it's just incredible. I mean, the plugins go from somebody being able to call for fire as a forward operator to somebody being able to submit a 9 line for a medevac or even airborne operations. I mean, guys can plan their jump and then turn around in real time on their TAC plugin, watch themselves drop to the drop zone and hit the right point on the map. It's just incredible the amount of capability that we have through the different plugins, right? And those all come from our vendor partners. And so the configuration steering board, who is the group of organizations in charge of TAC, annually hosts what we call a TAC offsite. And the idea of this offsite is really to allow that integration and that interaction to happen amongst all of these different partners, both public, private, and our operators, right? And so it's just incredible every year watching new partnerships form amongst different vendor partners, different government organizations, and just watching real-time feedback happen as people are demonstrating their capabilities at this event. And so this year we're hosting the TAC offsite in Colorado Springs in August, and we're really excited to see what new information and what new technologies come out of it.
Yeah, what's going to happen next? I remember when, like, I think smartphones or iPhones came out, there was a commercial that someone says there's an app for that. So I guess on your side, you're watching this whole app ecosystem network expand every year.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what came this year?
Yeah, and the really cool part that happens in the event too is, different government organizations watch what other organizations are funding, and they get to leverage the goodness that those other organizations have already created and paid for and invested in, right? And so that just compounds to how our taxpayer dollars get used even more efficiently and effectively while we're partnering still with our vendor partners the entire time.
Big return on investment.
Huge.
Yeah. So now we're going to be very selfish since, the power of ERDC. So how did ERDC initially get looped into the TAC program, and how is our geospatial research expertise, thanks to our team at GRL, continuing to support this program's operation and development?
So GRL, the Geospatial Research Lab, actually was involved pretty early with TAC, kind of tangentially providing a lot of the geospatial research and spatial analysis techniques and capabilities that we have in the lab, advising and assisting with some of the development on TAC itself, but also plugins and tools that were built. And that influence has kind of grown exponentially in the last, I'd say, 4 to 6 years. So a few years back, one of our subject matter experts at the lab became a liaison and part of that TAC product center that runs the core of TAC. He was a liaison between a special military unit and the development team, and really being that translator to make sure that the requirements from that military unit were transitioned to realized in the technology that was being developed. And we actually had an amazing thing happen in 2024. That individual is appointed as the director of TAC Product Center. And so there's this really cool synergy because at its core, TAC is a geospatial mapping software suite. And that is a core competency of the Geospatial Research Lab, right? And so having somebody at the helm of TAC that is literally a trained geographer by training, it really just deeply seeds the technical direction of that capability and continually grounds in that geospatial research and that technical expertise that the individual has. So as a whole, ERDC is supporting TAC from the top level of that strategic technical leadership down to the business operations and program management side, and all the way down to development. We have a core developer on our team as well. So we're from top to bottom supporting TAC.
One of the greatest things about the job I do, I get to, dip my toe in a lot of different conversations, a lot of different stories, and I've seen the ATAC, or the actual end part of it, and the software being used, and certain apps being developed for special military units and being tested and validated. It's really pretty interesting to watch. So that's good. So we often talk about the importance of feedback from the end user, one of which I just referenced, specifically touch points with military units to advance our research and improve technologies faster. Can you share some examples of how military personnel use TAC to conduct their missions in real time?
So since its inception, again, TAC has been deeply ingrained and embedded with the operators, right? We do not build TAC in a vacuum. It's what makes us super relevant, responsive, and reactive to what the needs are of the end user. And so we really work hard to continue to maintain that conversation with our end users as much as possible. But TAC is used not just as a planning tool, but every day in military missions on site, on every single day. And so, I mean, like I mentioned before, there's the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance mission, right? So on your TAC device, you literally can fly a small drone in the application with a plugin, fly your drone, and on real time, your map is showing the video on the map in the box that it sees and everything. So this allows commanders to see over ridge lines, around corners, without even taking their eyes off the common operational picture. You can see your guys on the map and the video feed. There's the ability to, like I mentioned, the airborne operations. We've got the ability to, the Indo-PACOM, they just did an exercise recently where guys are in a super dense, thick jungle scenario, but they can see their dots on the map and have situational awareness of where their teammates are. So there's no issue with having, fratricide or anything, right? They use it in defense operations, like base defense as well. So like the Air Force will use it to do perimeters and cordons, right? Perimeter defense. So if something happens, you're not yelling over a radio in real time trying to explain what's going on. You drop a dot on the map, you draw a box, and immediately your entire team sees in real time what's going on, right? So, and the cool part about all these different techniques and these different tools that I'm telling you about is they all come from an end user saying, hey, I've got a need. This is what I need to survive and win the fight. So that constant iteration, that feedback is really critical to our development.
Yeah, the end user pushing the advancements, pushing the development.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
And we mentioned earlier that TAC is not just a military tool. You have
Yeah.
Civ and other applications. It's become increasingly important to Homeland Security and public safety. Are there any examples where TAC has been used in disaster response to enhance national security?
So talking about the public safety side, I had a real wild moment at the TAC offsite last year, and it's incredible to watch. So I was listening to a briefer speak on the Kerr County floods in Texas from 2025, and TAC wasn't just an app that they on the side that they used. It literally was the foundation of their search and rescue effort, right? So the rescuers were going out, had TAC on their devices, and this was a multi-organization event, right? It wasn't just one particular organization. They're able to show where they are on the map, what's been cleared, what hasn't been cleared, if they discover something, if there are any hazards. All of those dots get dropped on the map in real time, and everybody is able to see what's going on. And I think one of the most impactful things that was just mind-blowing was that same map that those rescuers are using was his exact same digital map used to brief the President of the United States throughout the entire crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of shows how TAC is extensible from the lowest levels, lowest echelons, people on the ground, all the way up to like strategic command levels, and just covers the basis for everybody, because a map foundationally is one of the most important things you need for your operations.
Yeah, that was a devastating disaster, and a lot of people involved. I can only imagine the data that was kind of collected, and to try to make decisions in that response was pretty
It's
significant.
incredible.
Yeah. So the software is supported by 12 partners called the Configuration Steering Board, the CSB, a group that includes the Department of War, Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and others. How does TAC nurture this kind of cross country? See, first we're going to keep that for later. This cross-agency interoperability that is so central to the program.
So yeah, there are definitely a lot of cooks in the kitchen there, right? But at its core capability, it really comes down to that open platform that we provide, right? And so the most important thing across all these is each organization needs a reliable, high-performing map, right? And they want control over it. And so at its foundation, that's the bedrock of TAC is let's provide a common map for everybody to share data on. And then on top of that, each organization builds their mission-specific needs through their plugins that they offer. And so the configuration steering board does a really great job of making sure we stay tuned in to the core capability of we need a map, we need data, and we need to be able to share it. But then allowing us to extend through that open interface really allows us to kind of meet that bread and butter of what each organization needs. So it doesn't matter if you're the FBI trying to do an investigation or you're somebody doing wildfires, right, in the state of Colorado. You get to manage the maps all yourself in each organization. So it's pretty incredible.
And you mentioned earlier, we mentioned a couple of times, but each organization manages their own data. So like, there's not an inherent security issue with multiple people having access to your, I mean, they have the capability to like really silo their data, their mission sets from other organizations on the security level.
Yeah, so that goes back to the government-owned side, right? So we get to control the server. We build out that server infrastructure, and their teams build out how they want to share the data. And in certain instances, it might be a joint task force or whatever, where they will share with partner data, and they'll collaborate and they'll share that access. And then other times they'll lock it down for specific missions that are just for their unique organization.
That's really cool. So when comparing TAC to private sector off-the-shelf platforms, what makes this government-owned, which we've referenced it several times, model so critical? What are some of the unique advantages that when it comes to cross-branch interoperability and long-term costs?
So the biggest challenge or biggest risk we face with commercial off-the-shelf solutions is losing control of one of the most mission-critical capabilities we have for our end users and our warfighters, right? And so by being government-owned, we have complete sovereignty and autonomy of what we're working with here. And we're not going to be beholden to licensing fees in the future or proprietary data sets. And so having that control is really, really important for something that's so mission critical to us. Now, really, the bread and butter, though, is the interoperability that we provide. And so TAC is giving us a return on investment across the entire federal government, right? These agencies don't have to go it alone. So if Air Force invests in a capability, Army, FBI, DHS, all these different organizations get to leverage, as we mentioned before, the dollars and the investments that have already been made because we're all operating on that same base core infrastructure. And then on top of that, it provides that interoperability because we're all operating from that same government-owned globe. If we need to turn on a joint task force, it's not a heavy lift to try to make 12 different companies' maps try to function together in a quick instance, right? We're operating off that base capability that allows us to all work together.
And private industry is allowed to kind of play in the sandbox by the apps development and the on-site that y'all have and that kind of stuff. They're able to play in that sandbox and develop new technologies and techniques.
Yeah, we absolutely need that, right?
Yes,
they are critical to our team, but we want to make sure the core capability never goes away, and we want to make sure that we have control over that for multiple reasons.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you a quick question. You're a mathematician, which the fact that you and I are having a conversation and understand each other is fantastic because I don't speak math. So how did you get involved with a mathematician to a geospatial into a mapping, suite of software suite? How did that transit? How did that happen?
No path is ever straight, right? But I think it started back in my first part of my career with ERDC. I got brought in with an excellent division chief who knew that math is just a tool. And so I got involved in dismounted route planning software early in my career of trying to figure out the best route from A to B for Private Smith and saying, up and over the mountain might not be the best option, but we're going to apply some math behind it and try to help you decide better on how to make route planning happen, right? And so then from there, I did a little bit of project management, got my PMP and worked my way through that portion and then looped all the way back around. And during my route planning days, I got access to operators through different events I attended, which really gave me the passion for trying to help the end user as much as possible, seeing that the mission is so important. Those end users are our absolute, just our gold, right? And so whatever I can do to help them. So that's how I got to loop back into TAC in the later part of my career thus far and just be able to help those operational units more on the administrative side, but it's required to make it happen. So that's how I got tied in.
I think we've heard so many stories similar to that at ERDC is like, I maybe my academic background may be this, but I'm applying it so much differently to this.
Yeah.
You must have a lot of that, in your team, but that same passion for the end user and the results is very similar. So let's wrap up on TAC. Technology is moving incredibly fast, and as the military leans into artificial intelligence and other cutting edge advancements, what is the next iteration for TAC? How are y'all balancing new technology and the need for users as it's moving so quickly?
Yeah, so obviously we're watching how heavy the DOW is really leaning forward on trying to integrate AI into the fight, right? And so the next iteration of TAC is not about us inventing our own proprietary AI. We know that the commercial industry is leading the cutting edge of that, right? So what we see TAC being is really that interface or that front end for the users, the end users, to access those cutting edge capabilities. So we're not trying to shove a language model into TAC and try to make it fit. We see it kind of as a data pipeline, right? And so TAC generates millions upon millions of geospatial data points in real time every single day. And so what we see is feeding that data back through some sort of pipeline and letting those commercial AI in the background, chugging on it, chewing it up, analyzing it, finding optimized routes, finding, threats, analyzing other parts of the geospatial data, and then sending a refined result back to the end user in the platform that they're comfortable with and have been using for years, right? And so this is going to be critical, probably going to happen through a plugin structure as well, right? So as those different vendors develop different capabilities, connecting them through another plugin. But our end users are most important. Like I keep saying, I cannot stress that enough. And so we need to bring them the most cutting edge technology, right? And so to do that, we need access to these capabilities. And really the foundation behind what's happening is not going to change TAC, right? And so as we ask about how are they going to trust it, well, TAC itself is going to stay conceptually the same, right? We're just going to give it more access for that situational awareness, that refinement, those results that are going to come from that AI integration through these excellent commercial partners that we have.
Well, you mentioned a minute ago the on-site coming up in August. I can't wait to hear the stories of what happens after that. The discussions in the corner between vendors, that what they create, and the solutions that come from that. It'll be fun.
Yeah, it's really an amazing thing to see, because literally on the fly, operators will walk up and ask a vendor, like, how does this work? And they'll demonstrate how to fly a drone with it or whatever. And you'll see them make suggestions in real time. That evening, the vendor will go home into their hotel room, code something up and bring it back to the next day and show an operator, hey, is this what you were thinking? And literally on site every single day, we want those people there kind of having those conversations, coming up with new ideas, and it really seems to have a great balance of what we're learning for the future and also how do we learn from the past.
Well, fantastic. Well, listen, thanks for joining us. I appreciate the information and the time. And to remind our audience that, listen, there's a couple of things. One, tac.gov for information on the whole suite of options there. For more information, you can email us at erdcinfo at usace.army.mil, and we'll make sure that Katlyn and her team get that information. And then also you can visit Power of Erdic podcast.org. I'm going to give you a lot of websites today. poweroferdictpodcast.org. For this episode, we'll have some links to some key information for the viewers and listeners there as well. So again, Katlyn, thank you. To our audience, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.